Hi, and so today I've been thinking a lot about language and communication and resistance with other animals and how we ignore and misinterpret what they say a lot of the time. This is Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency. And yeah, this was all triggered by one of my cat family called Bob. Um, had been very, very yowly and meowly for quite a few months actually. And, I thought, because he is very territorial, like these are territorial issues, or maybe he's getting a bit older, or maybe it's separation anxiety because he's very sort of, bonded. And then the other week, last week basically, it all came to a head, and he was like kind of really sort of touching his mouth and seemed to be in a lot of distress. So, I did that thing that we as cat carers dread, made the vet appointment, shoveled poor Bob into the carrier. It's very difficult. Um, and you obviously feel terrible about doing it that like that, but he has to go. Anyway, so the vet said, "Well, we need to, his teeth are in a really bad state." They showed me a photo, and it was sort of like black and bloody. And she said, "Oh, it's loose," So obviously, Bob was in tremendous pain. Um, he was whipped in the next day, um, and basically they said it was even worse, and that all his teeth had to be removed. So obviously, that is a challenging thing for both Bob and myself. Now, the strange thing that happened and that kind of compounded me thinking about communication and how that plays into resistance as well was that after the operation, I like when he came home, Bob was sort of suddenly bounding around. There was all this stuff in the pet's instructions saying, put them in a quiet room, feed them a little bit of maybe chicken, yikes, a tiny bit. And basically, Bob was sort of like bounding around. And in the subsequent days, he's like become almost like a kitten again, much more sort of relaxed and energized and everything else. Even playing, which he didn't really do before. Um, so I thought, what had Bob actually been communicating in the previous months? Where I was like, oh yes, it's territorial. He's got separation anxiety, all this sort of stuff, and totally believing that. Whilst Bob was trying to communicate, my teeth are really killing me. It's really, really painful. And that's what the yowls were about. These yowls were absolutely agonizing. And I thought he was just ramping up his normal sort of yowliness. It really made me think about how we ignore and misinterpret the communications of other animals, because this is quite a sort of simple, although it had played out over months, example. And it was very clear because in a sense, afterwards, because of the vet intervention. So I had the before and the after. But, in a more generalized sense, with other animals, what on earth are they communicating to us every single second of every single day? And what are we ignoring? They're communicating a lot of the time their resistance. And this is another thread of something that I came across about, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. This Facebook um, page called Animal Resistance. I must admit, I thought, it had examples of cows jumping out of trucks, and I think there was some other cow that ran through a supermarket and was, killed, because they're always killed. Um, and I thought these were just a few, examples of stuff that other animals did, but it was so rare. That was my take on it. I thought, oh, this is all so rare, and it's almost like a bit on the slightly sentimentalist side of things to, try and portray them as resisting. Hmm. Well, fast forward 2 years, and I'm going to eat my words about that because of this book. This one is Animals Resistance in the Global Capitalist Era by Sarat Colling. This book, I broke my Amazon boycott to buy because it looked so interesting. And it is, I've just started it. Now, the thing about the resistance and the communications of other animals, this is a massive thing. The research that Sarat Colling has done is quite mind boggling. And it's kind of colossal, really, the amount of resistance that animals have been doing since human animals started to basically try and dominate and control, and the whole human supremacist thing kicked in. Because apparently, this is from the book, for about 200,000 years, humans had a peaceful coexistence with other animals, and they were kind of, more or less gatherers, hunters. It was kind of egalitarian, and there was the concept. There was no real concept of property. It was all about peaceful coexistence and cooperation. Sounds great, doesn't it? Ha ha ha. Bit of a far cry from our lives today. And interestingly, the whole concept of property emerged when people started to domesticate other animals, which was about 10,000 to 8,000 before the Common Era. And the concept of property with cattle, the word cattle came from the word chattel, which actually meant property, started to exist. So we come to Roman times, and we got the circuses where tens of thousands, this is so horrendous, of animals, so-called exotic animals like elephants, bears, antelopes, rhinoceri, lions, panthers, I mean, you name it, ostriches, were basically taken away from their own countries, stuffed, struggling and trapped, struggling and fighting, often starved, into ships and dragged back to Rome to fight in these horrendous so-called circuses for the entertainment of the Roman crowds. And it was a display by the Roman emperors of like human supremacy, and basically a bit of a warning to the ordinary Romans of, this is the way things go, chummies, and watch out, you could be chucked to the blooming lions as well. But many of the animals that were taken struggled, and they're actual not photographs, mosaics showing this hay fever, showing the animals actually struggling and fighting, and the wings flapping. So this is all the communication, all the animals communicating and trying to escape. Sorry. But they were all basically killed for the bloodlust of Homo sapiens. So this book, I've just kind of started, as I said, I'm in the introduction, the picture of, a tiger escapes and is killed by Emperor Commodus. Then there's this other one here, which is the struggling animals, elephants escaping, trying to escape. It was quite difficult to read this introduction. I mean, it's not boring, it's that this is the animals trying to escape, ostriches being taken onto the boat. And, so there was a lot of struggling, which was all really ignored and continues to be ignored. So it made me think also back to my own cat, Bob, a family member, how he didn't want to be put into his carrier. You know, he was saying, "No, no, no, I don't want to go." And then basically, as a larger person, I sort of like did the combination of treats and sort of like basically tipping him into the carrier. And he was very, very unhappy. So that and that all seems quite legit, but in another way, it's quite sort of like horrible as well. So this is all making me think about this whole voiceless thing and how we as human animals interpret what other animals are saying and the way that they say it. And it's really made me observe the two cats in my family, Bob and Liz, a lot more closely. I mean, I sort of observed them closely anyway, but kind of it's put a new filter, an extra layer of filter onto what are they saying. You know, when they come up to you and they, or maybe they're sort of like come up and then they sort of like they look and you think, well, they're hesitating, they don't know what they're doing, but what are they actually doing? Are they thinking about something? They're making a decision. Maybe they're thinking, is it safe here? Is it warm? Is she in a good mood? Is she in a bad mood? Where do I want to sit? You know, we don't know. We put the interpretation, which tends to infantilize the other animal. They're indecisive. Yes, come here, it's all fine. You know, we're clueless a lot of the time, absolutely clueless, even with these other animals that are family members and that we know pretty intimately. So that's been really interesting. And to try and just sort of see, kind of imagine them as having more, as it were, sense than we generally give them credit for. You know, that they're making sensible, informed decisions. Like people also always talk about cats going inside and outside of the door of the house to the outside. Well, maybe they're checking things out. You know, they don't want to be, you know, they are prey animals as well. Maybe they don't want to be eaten. Maybe they're sniffing out the weather, or who knows what they're sussing out there. But we do tend to sort of imagine that, oh, yeah, they can make up their mind, you know, that sort of a thing. So I think this is all really key for us as animal advocates. Yes, this notion of the voiceless, hmm, which is clearly denoting other animals as voiceless, which is basically that's a human supremacist position. And as vegans, we really need to get those filters of human supremacy off ourselves as quickly and effectively as we can. Because whilst we are the arbiters of the voiceless, I mean, that's just the arrogance of that is actually quite startling and shocking. These animals, my Bob is not voiceless. The animals in animal death industries are not voiceless. The animals in the Roman circuses were not voiceless. They were making their feelings and their desires and their wishes known consistently over time, and they consistently do that. But the voiceless thing really plays into this whole saviour thing, doesn't it? This whole sort of like colonial, yeah, well, we can save them, we can save the other animals, you know, because we are the, you know, we are what? We are Homo sapiens, you know, that's totally trashed this planet and he's sort of like marching us selves and all other beings towards Armageddon at a rate of absolute knots. Yeah, right. Yeah, safe hands there, I don't think. So I think this whole voiceless framing is, you know, key to denial and inaction. And I also think it really sort of like buys into the welfarist ideology of like, yeah, we humans know best, you know, because of great big brains. Yeah, right. Hey. So I think that to truly align with the liberation struggles of other animals, we need to re educate ourselves. And this is on an ongoing basis. Consciously remove, be aware of, and then remove our human supremacist filters, which we have, are embedded in our reality. Listen and watch and observe what the animals are doing and try and interpret them in another, giving other animals credit for knowing that they have for their own agency and for knowing what they want to do, their intentionality. Yeah, that's absolutely right. They do use sound and body language, and I think that's really key. And their sounds can be language as well. You know, that there's sound that is language and sound that is not language. So that's absolutely right. And just want to get away from this whole voiceless human supremacist thing and see the other animals as beings that have an authentic interest, a total interest, total agency, and intentionality in their own lives and their own desires and their wishes. And Bob is doing pretty good. He's got another checkup at the vet next week. It's a bit of a slower process than I'd hoped, but generally he seems to be, fingers crossed, on the mend. So I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to share this with like-minded people because sometimes you just feel a bit of an idiot thinking these kind of things, and it's probably not a conversation I'll have with it, but who knows. So if you found value in this, and if you think there are any friends or anyone that you'd like to share this with, who might also find value in it, that would be great. So share if you want to, like if you want to, and I'll be posting another video quite soon, hopefully, maybe even tomorrow. I don't know, depending on how various things go. Anyway, so this is Pamela from Animal Justice Emergency. Thank you for your time and attention, and have a great rest of the day. Thinking about the animals, thinking about the birds, watching them. What are and it's like last thought on this actually. It's like when you read these sort of like kiddie sort of like books or fairy tales where the animals are talking. Well, hey ho, maybe the authors there were actually channeling, connecting into something. Who knows? Who knows? That's the mystical outlook from Animal Justice Emergency today. You take care, have fun, and talk to the animals, and I'll talk back. Take care, guys. Bye.